The awakening the chamber was silent, a silence so deep it felt alive. The walls were smooth, cold, and glowing faintly with a strange blue light. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then a soft breath escaped from the figure lying inside a pod. Her chest rose weakly, and her eyelids trembled as if fighting to open. The alien girl stirred, her body heavy as if chains were holding her down. She forced her eyes open and found herself trapped in darkness. Her skin was pale and almost luminous. Against the dim light, strange glowing lines were etched into her arms and stomach. Pulsing like veins of fire, she touched her belly with trembling fingers and froze. It was round, heavy, alive. She gasped in terror as realization struck. She was pregnant. Her heart pounded. She tried to remember how this happened, but her memories were shattered like broken glass. Faces appeared in fragments, shadows with long hands, glowing tools cutting into her body. And then endless pain. She shut her eyes, trying to push the memories away. Her lips trembled as she whispered in her own language. A sound filled with fear and despair. Around her, the chamber responded. A thin beam of red light scanned her face. The machines around her hummed like insects awakening. She realized she was not just trapped, she was being watched. Panic filled her chest. She pulled at the wires connected to her skin, tearing them free. Blood oozed from the wounds, and the pain made her scream. Her voice echoed in the empty halls, yet no one answered. She felt utterly alone, her hands clutched her stomach, and she whispered to the unborn child, begging it to stay alive. In desperation, she reached for the console beside the pod. Her fingers brushed against the surface, and it lit up with alien symbols. She pressed random patterns, her strength fading. Finally, one symbol glowed brighter than the rest. A soft vibration ran through the air, and a signal was released. It was her last attempt, an ancient SOS code carried into the void. She collapsed to her knees, her breathing shallow. Her body weak, her mind whispered, "No one will hear me." Yet far above the planet, someone did. A human sat in the cockpit of a battered ship. His name was David, an explorer and scavenger who roamed abandoned ruins in search of salvage. He was tired, his eyes half closed, when his console blinked with a strange pulse. At first he ignored it, thinking it was static. But then he heard a sound, a broken voice, faint and trembling. "Help. Please." David froze. He leaned closer, adjusting the signal. The words repeated. Weak and filled with pain, his heart pounded. The voice was not human, it was alien, yet strangely clear. He swallowed hard. His instincts told him to stay away, abandoned. Facilities often held traps, signals used to lure scavengers to their deaths. But something about this voice was different. It wasn't a command, it wasn't a threat. It was a cry for help, a living being begging for life. David sat back in his chair, staring at the empty darkness outside his viewport. He had choices. He could ignore it, continue his work, and live another day, or he could follow the signal. Into danger, risking his life for a stranger he had never met. The voice echoed again, softer now. "Please. I don't want to die." David closed his eyes. He remembered battles he had seen, worlds destroyed by war, and survivors calling for help when no one came. He remembered being ignored once, left behind when he needed rescue. That memory burned in his chest. He opened his eyes with determination. His hand moved to the controls. His ship turned, engines roaring as he locked onto the faint signal. Far below, the alien girl lay against the cold floor, her body weak, her voice almost gone. She believed her message had disappeared into the void, but in the silence of her prison, she felt a small spark of hope. Her eyes closed, and she whispered one last word, "Human." The chamber lights flickered, as if reacting to her voice. The machines around her pulsed with a strange rhythm, somewhere deep inside the darkness. A new story had begun. The human's choice. David sat in the dim cockpit, the glow of the console painting sharp lines across his tired face. The ship hummed around him, its old engines groaning like weary beasts. The SOS signal flickered on the screen, pulsing faintly as if it were a heartbeat. He leaned forward, staring at it, torn between instinct and duty. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Signals like this had lured many scavengers to their deaths. Pirates used fake distress calls. Abandoned war machines still hunted anything that moved. He knew the risks better than most. He had buried friends who chased voices in the dark, and yet, this one was different. It wasn't coded military chatter. It wasn't a robotic loop. It was raw, broken, desperate. A girl's voice whispering through static, her words fragile like glass. Please. Help. Me. David ran a hand over his beard. His mind shouted to leave it, to shut it off and move on. But his heart pulled the other way. He could not forget her tone. That trembling cry pierced deeper than logic. He closed his eyes, remembering another voice long ago, his brother's, during the last war. A call for help that no one answered. A signal drowned in silence. He had survived, but his brother hadn't. The memory was a wound that never healed. David's hands tightened on the controls. He muttered to himself, "Not again." He flicked switches, bringing the scanners online. The ship traced the signal to a planet below. A barren world marked as abandoned after the old wars. Records said it had been used for experiments before the collapse. No colonies, no trade, only ruins left to rot. The computer beeped. Warning. High radiation detected. Life unlikely, David ignored it. His jaw tightened. Life unlikely doesn't mean impossible, he whispered. As the ship descended, the planet's surface came into view. Dead landscapes stretched across the horizon. Mountains torn apart by craters, rivers dried into black scars. The ruins of structures jutted from the ground like broken teeth. He followed the signal to a massive crater. Inside it lay a facility, half buried. Walls cracked and bleeding faint light. A place that looked alive even in ruin. The cockpit shuddered as he entered the thin atmosphere. Dust storms clawed at the hull. The ship groaned, but pushed through. Finally, he landed near the edge of the crater. His eyes never left the scanner. The signal was coming from deep inside. David grabbed his gear, a worn rifle, a pack of supplies, and a lamp strapped to his shoulder. He hesitated at the ramp, staring into the storm outside. His gut screamed danger, but the voice echoed again in his mind. "I don't want to die." He stepped out. The crater floor was silent, except for the wind. The facility loomed ahead, doors half open. Metal twisted like bones. The air smelled of dust and something sharp, something chemical. He swallowed hard and moved forward, his boots sinking into the ash inside. The halls were cold and damp. Lights flickered weakly. Wires hung like vines. Every step echoed too loud, reminding him he was alone. He passed broken machines, shattered pods, and walls etched with strange alien markings. He paused when he saw a cracked stasis chamber. Inside, it was nothing but dust and bone. His chest tightened. He wondered if the voice belonged to someone already dead, a ghost trapped in static. But then his cum crackled. Her voice again, faint but alive. "Please, hurry." His heart raced. She was real. She was alive, somewhere in this maze. He moved faster now, ignoring fear. Each corner he turned revealed new horrors, shattered embryos in glass. Blood dried into black stains, doors sealed with warning symbols. It was clear this was no ordinary facility. It was a place of experiments. The signal grew stronger, leading him deeper underground. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. His lamp flickered across a wall smeared with alien handprints. He shivered, tightening his grip on the rifle. Finally, he reached a sealed chamber door. The scanner confirmed. The voice was coming from inside. David placed his hand on the metal. It vibrated faintly as if alive. His heart pounded in his chest. Sweat trickled down his temple. He whispered to himself, "This is it." With a deep breath, he worked. The controls, the door hissed, grinding as it slid open. The air inside rushed out, thick and stale. His lamp cut through the darkness, revealing a figure slumped on the floor. She was there, the alien girl, her skin glowing faintly, her body trembling, her eyes fluttered open, wide and filled with fear. Her lips moved, and a soft word escaped. Human. David froze. His breath caught in his throat. This was no trap, no trick. It was real. A living being had cried for help, and he had answered. The dark facility, the chamber smelled of metal and decay. David's lamp beam cut through the stale air, casting long shadows that twisted across the cracked walls. The alien girl lay weak on the floor, her glowing skin faint in the darkness. Her eyes blinked slowly, as if she were caught between life and death. David knelt beside her, his voice low. "I heard your signal," the girl trembled, whispering in a language he barely understood, yet one word reached him clearly, the same word she had spoken before human. Her voice was fragile, filled with both fear and hope. David reached into his pack, pulling out a small water container. He lifted her gently, helping her drink. She coughed, but her body leaned toward the warmth of his hands. The facility around them groaned, as if waking from sleep. Machines hidden in the walls flickered with strange lights. The ground beneath them vibrated faintly. David's instincts screamed at him. This place was not dead. It was watching. He studied the chamber, noticing the pod she had escaped from. Broken glass scattered the floor, wires sparking faintly. On the walls, strange symbols glowed in red, almost alive. He touched one with his glove, and it pulsed beneath his fingers. The alien girl flinched, shaking her head quickly. Her weak hand grabbed his wrist. Her voice cracked as she forced out broken words. "No." "Danger." David pulled back. His rifle hung at his side, ready. He scanned the room again. His lamp revealed other pods, most shattered, some still intact. Inside them floated things he could barely describe. Twisted shapes, part flesh, part machine. Some looked half-formed, as if experiments had been abandoned mid-creation. Others pressed their faces to the glass, lifeless eyes staring into nothing. David's stomach tightened. He muttered, "What the hell happened here?" The girl followed his gaze, her expression pained. She pressed a hand against her swollen belly. A silent tear slid down her cheek. David didn't need her words to understand. She had been one of them. Another victim of whatever nightmare had unfolded here. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the hall. A mechanical screech, metal grinding against stone. David spun toward the noise. His lamp flickered across the ceiling, revealing movement. From the shadows crawled a machine, its body spider-like, long limbs of steel scraping against the walls. Its head glowed with a single red eye. The thing scanned the chamber, locking onto the girl. David raised his rifle instantly. His finger tightened on the trigger. The shot rang out, the bullet sparking against the machine's armor. The creature shrieked, lunging forward with terrifying speed. David shoved the girl aside and rolled. The machine's limbs smashed into the ground where he had stood, sending sparks into the air. He fired again, this time striking one of its legs. The limbs snapped, and the machine stumbled. The girl crawled to the corner, her body shaking as she shielded her stomach, her eyes wide with terror. She whispered something in her alien tongue. A prayer or a plea. David's rifle clicked empty. He cursed it under his breath, grabbing a steel pipe from the floor. As the machine lunged again, he swung hard, smashing its glowing eye. The light cracked, sparks bursting out. The machine convulsed before collapsing in a shower of smoke. The hall went silent again. David breathed heavily, sweat dripping down his temple. He leaned against the wall, staring at the wreckage. "That wasn't just security," he muttered. "That was a hunter." The alien girl tried to stand, her weak legs trembling. David rushed to her side, helping her up. She clung to him, her voice faint. "More coming." His eyes narrowed. He looked down the dark corridor. The silence was heavy, but in the distance, faint clicks echoed like footsteps, slow and steady. David adjusted his pack and tightened his grip on the rifle, even though it was almost useless now. He glanced at the girl. Her glowing skin and trembling form made her look fragile. But in her eyes he saw something else, a determination to survive. He whispered, more to himself than to her, "If more are coming, we move." Together they stepped deeper into the facility. The halls stretched endlessly, filled with broken doors and shattered labs. Strange fluids dripped from the ceilings, glowing faintly in the dark. Every corner carried new horrors, scribbles in alien language carved into the walls. Bones half buried under shattered glass. David realized this place was not abandoned. It was alive, a nest of experiments that refused to die. As they walked, the girl leaned on him, her breaths shallow. She whispered broken words, fragments of her story. Taken. Tested. Child. Weapon. David felt a chill. He looked at her swollen belly, his heart tightening. Whoever had done this hadn't just experimented. They had created something inside her, something they wanted. He muttered under his breath, "Not on my watch." Corridor ended in a vast chamber, a control center filled with screens. Most were shattered, but a few still glowed faintly, showing unreadable data. In the center was a massive pod, larger than the rest, sealed shut. Its surface moved as if something inside was breathing. The girl froze, her body shaking violently, her eyes filled with terror. She whispered one word, "Mother." David's stomach dropped. He didn't know what waited inside that pod, but the way she looked at it told him everything he needed. This was no rescue mission anymore. This was survival against something far worse than he imagined. The rescued. Silence inside the chamber was heavy, almost crushing. The huge sealed pod loomed in the center like a beating heart. Its surface rippled faintly, as though something inside was alive. David's lamp swept across broken consoles, sparking wires and shattered glass, but it always came back to the pod. Beside him, the alien girl trembled. Her glowing skin flickered like a fading star. Her swollen belly rose and fell with shallow breaths. She pointed a weak finger toward the pod, her voice cracking. "No. Dangerous. Destroy." Before David could speak, the ground shook. A deep vibration rattled the walls. Machines hidden in the shadows came alive, red lights blinking like eyes. The sound of gears grinding filled the air. Then, with a piercing shriek, the pod began to open. David raised his rifle. Though he knew the magazine was nearly empty, his heart pounded, sweat dripping down his brow. From the pod, steam poured out, blinding him. A clawed limb burst through the mist, followed by another. The creature stepped forward, its body a twisted fusion of flesh and steel. Its chest pulsed with tubes. Its face stretched into something monstrous, yet its eyes glowed faintly like the alien girl's, a cruel imitation of life. The girl gasped, clutching her stomach. Her whisper carried terror. "They made her mother." David's grip tightened. He had seen horrors in battle, but this was different. This was unnatural. The thing turned its gaze toward the girl, its body twitching as if drawn to her presence. Then the alarms blared. From the ceiling, drones dropped, like steel vultures, their wings slicing the air. Red eyes locked onto David and the girl. Weapons unfolded from their bodies, glowing with deadly light. David reacted instantly. Pulling the girl behind a console, a beam of energy struck where they had stood, blasting the wall into molten slag. The heat washed over them. He cursed. Fumbling with his rifle, he fired at the nearest drone, sparks flying as it crashed against the floor. The girl cried out, shielding her stomach. David turned to her, his voice rough but steady. "Stay low, don't move." Another drone swooped, claws outstretched. David grabbed a broken steel rod from the ground and swung. The rod smashed through its eye, sending it spinning into the wall. Explosions of sparks lighting the chamber, but the mother creature roared. Its claws scraped against the metal floor, advancing toward them. Every step shook the ground. David fired his last rounds into its chest. The bullets tore into flesh, but the creature barely slowed. David's rifle clicked empty. He threw it aside and pulled the girl closer, His eyes scanned the chamber desperately. He spotted an emergency lever on the wall near the main console. Markings in alien script glowed faintly above it. He didn't know what it would do, but it was their only chance. "Hold on," he whispered, lifting the girl into his arms. She was weak, but her eyes met his with desperate trust. He ran across the chamber, dodging beams of fire. The creature's roar followed them, claws slamming against the floor as it gave chase. A drone swooped low. David ducked, spinning his body to shield the girl. The beam grazed his arm, searing pain burning through his flesh. He gritted his teeth and kept running. His boots slammed against the metal floor, each step heavier than the last. He reached the console, slamming the girl down gently behind cover. With one hand he grabbed the lever and yanked. Sparks exploded across the room, sirens wailed, and the walls themselves began to shift. Massive steel doors dropped from the ceiling, crushing drones mid-flight. The floor panels opened, swallowing machines into burning pits below. The creature roared in rage as chains shot out from the walls, wrapping around its limbs. It thrashed violently, tearing some chains free, but more locked onto its body, pulling it back toward the pod. The chamber shook as the pod sealed again, forcing the monster inside. Steam burst from every crack, drowning its roar into silence. David collapsed against the console, his chest heaving, his arm burned with pain, blood soaking his sleeve. He turned to the girl. She was trembling, but alive, her wide eyes locked onto him, filled with something he hadn't seen before. Hope. He forced a small smile. "Told you I'd get you out." But before he could catch his breath, the console beeped with a new warning. The alien script translated roughly into a single terrifying word: self-destruct. David's eyes widened. He looked at the girl, her strength fading fast, and then at the warning lights flashing across the room. He had minutes, maybe less. He pulled her into his arms again, his voice low but determined. "We're not dying here." The facility groaned as explosions echoed from deep below. The walls cracked, dust falling from above. The air filled with smoke and fire. David ran into the unknown corridors, carrying the alien girl close. Behind them, the facility began to collapse, each blast louder than the last. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of machines still stirred, but he ignored it. There was only one mission now: rescue her or die trying. The Bonda tunnels shook with every explosion behind them. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling. Smoke curled around the broken walls. David's boots pounded against the metal floor as he carried the alien girl through the collapsing corridors. His breath was heavy, his muscles burned, but he refused to slow down. At last, they burst into a side chamber, smaller and intact. He kicked the door shut behind them, locking out the chaos. For a moment, there was silence except for the sound of his breathing. He set the girl down gently against the wall. Her glowing skin flickered weakly. Her eyes were half closed, her breath shallow. She clutched her swollen belly with trembling hands. David knelt in front of her, concern etched across his face. "You're safe now," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if the words were true. The girl's lips moved, soft sounds escaping in her alien tongue. He could not understand most of it, but one word repeated: "Child." Her voice cracked each time she said it, her eyes shining with fear. David nodded slowly. "The child," he said quietly. "You're protecting it." She looked at him with wide, tired eyes and nodded. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Her hand reached out, touching his chest weakly as if asking a question. David placed his hand gently over hers. "I don't know who did this to you," he said, his voice low and steady, "but I won't let them finish it." Her body shook with silent sobs. For a long moment, there were no words, only the quiet bond of two beings from different worlds sharing the same pain. David reached into his pack, pulling out a small ration bar and a water flask. He offered them to her. She looked at the strange objects with suspicion at first, then slowly accepted. She ate with small bites, her eyes never leaving his. As she ate, David studied her. Her features were sharp yet delicate, her eyes large and luminous. Her skin glowed faintly as if lit from within. But what struck him most was not her alien beauty, it was the way she fought to live despite everything. "You sent that signal," David said, trying to bridge the silence. "That's why I'm here." The girl tilted her head, struggling to find words in his language. Her voice was broken, but she forced them out. "Alone. No one come, but human come." David's chest tightened. He gave a small smile. "Yeah, humans are stubborn like that." Her lips curved faintly, the ghost of a smile. For a moment, the fear in her eyes softened. The chamber shook again. Distant explosions rumbling like thunder. David tensed. His instincts told him the facility was dying, but also that it wasn't finished with them yet. He checked his rifle, useless now, then looked at the steel rod he had carried since they fight. It wasn't much, but it was something. He turned back to her. "We need to keep moving soon," he said. "But you need strength first." She nodded weakly. Her hand rested on her stomach again. She whispered a word in her language, and though David couldn't understand, he knew the meaning. It was a promise to her unborn child. David leaned closer, speaking softly. "I'll protect both of you." Her eyes widened slightly. She studied him as though trying to see if he meant it. Then slowly she nodded. A fragile trust had begun to form. For the first time since awakening, she did not look afraid. Instead, she looked at him as if he were the only light left in the darkness. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the rumble of collapsing walls beyond. David leaned against the cold metal, exhaustion pressing on him. The girl shifted closer, her head resting against his shoulder. He froze for a moment, then relaxed, letting her rest. Her voice was faint, almost like a dream. "Why, help me." David looked down at her, his throat tightening. He thought of his brother's last call for help, ignored by everyone else. He thought of how it felt to be left behind. He whispered, "Because someone should have helped me once. And they didn't." The girl's eyes softened. She did not fully understand his words, but she understood the feeling. She reached for his hand, their fingers brushing. It was a small touch, but powerful, in that broken chamber, surrounded by ruins and death. Two strangers from different worlds shared something rare: trust. David closed his eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle. The bond was fragile, but real. He knew the journey ahead would be harder. The facility was not finished with them, and the galaxy beyond was even less forgiving. But for now, with her leaning against him and his hand resting over hers, he felt a strange sense of purpose. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting her, protecting the child, and proving that humanity still carried something the galaxy often forgot: compassion. And in that silent chamber, as the walls trembled with the dying roars of the facility, the bond between human and alien was sealed. The escape, the silence, did not last. A deep rumble rolled through the walls, shaking the chamber like thunder. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling, and the faint glow of the machines flickered in warning. David's eyes snapped open. His instincts, scream time, was up. He pushed himself to his feet and helped the alien girl rise. Her body was weak, her legs trembling, but her eyes held a quiet strength now. She leaned against him, clutching her stomach. Together, they moved toward the only exit. Behind them, the walls groaned as explosions echoed deeper underground. The facility was tearing itself apart. The ground cracked, panels splitting open to reveal glowing pits below. Steam hissed from broken pipes, filling the corridors with heat. David's lamp flickered as they hurried forward. The tunnel stretched endlessly, its walls lined with shattered pods and hanging wires. Every step they took was chased by fire and falling debris. Then came the sound, metallic screeches echoing through the halls. The hunter machines were not done. Their red eyes glowed in the distance. Crawling closer through the smoke, the alien girl gripped David's arm tighter. Fear in her eyes, her voice cracked as she whispered, "Run!" And they did. David pulled her along, his boots slamming against the floor. The machines gave chase. claws tearing at the walls as they closed in. Red beams shot past them, burning holes into the metal. Sparks rained down like fire. A collapsed beam blocked their path. David cursed under his breath. He shoved the girl ahead and crawled through the narrow gap. The machine screeched behind them, one claw slamming inches from his back as he pulled himself through. On the other side, they stumbled into a vast corridor. Its ceiling was half collapsed, revealing glimpses of the storm outside. Rain and ash fell through the cracks, mixing with fire and smoke. The girl's legs gave out. She fell to her knees, her hand clutching her stomach. David dropped beside her, his heart pounding. He could see her strength fading, her body failing under the weight of both exhaustion and fear. He grabbed her shoulders, his voice rough but urgent. "Stay with me, you hear me, stay with me." Her glowing eyes looked into his, fragile but determined. She whispered one word, "Child." David's throat tightened. He nodded firmly. "I'll get both of you out." The machine screeches grew louder. Their shadows stretched across the walls as they crawled closer. David hauled the girl back into his arms, carrying her despite the fire in his muscles. He pushed forward, each step heavier than the last. They burst into a loading bay, giant doors towering ahead. The storm outside roared through the cracks. Freedom was close, but the doors were sealed, rusted shut from years of decay. David set the girl down gently and ran to the console. His fingers flew across the ancient controls. Sparks burst, the screen flashing warnings in alien script. He slammed the panel with his fist, shouting in frustration. Behind them, claws scraped against the floor. The machines emerged into the bay, red eyes burning through the smoke. The alien girl cried out weakly, reaching toward him. Her voice broke. "Human, hurry!" David's eyes darted across the bay, searching desperately. His gaze locked on a lever near the main gate. He sprinted toward it, leaping over fallen crates as beams of fire chased him. He grabbed the lever and pulled with all his strength. The metal groaned. Screeching filled the air as gears turned for the first time in decades. Slowly, painfully, the doors began to rise. A blast of cold wind and ash rushed in. David ran back, scooping the girl into his arms. The machine screeched and lunged. One leapt, claws extended. David swung the steel rod with his free hand, smashing it across the creature's head. The machine crashed into the floor, sparks flying. Another drone swooped. David ducked, rolling as the claws scraped the wall. He stumbled to his feet, breath ragged, and pushed forward toward the opening doors. The gap was small but growing. He shoved the girl through first, then crawled after her. A clawed hand shot out, scraping across his back. Pain burned, but he forced himself onward with one final push. They rolled out onto the crater floor. The storm howled around them, lightning cracking across the black sky. Behind them, the facility roared like a dying beast. Flames shot through the cracks as the entire structure began to collapse. The machines screeched inside, their cries silenced as the walls caved in. The doors slammed shut behind them, sealing the horrors within. Moments later, the ground shook violently, and the facility sank deeper into the crater. Swallowed by fire and dust, David lay on the ash-covered ground, gasping for air. The alien girl lay beside him, her glowing skin faint but steady. Her eyes fluttered open, locking on his for the first time. There was no fear in her gaze, only trust. David reached out, his hand brushing hers. His voice was hoarse but firm. "You're safe now, I promise," she whispered faintly, her lips trembling. Together, and for the first time since entering the nightmare, David allowed himself to believe they might actually make it. The revelation. The storm raged across the crater. Lightning cracked against the blackened sky. Rain mixed with ash poured down, soaking the broken ground. David sat in the mud, his chest heaving, the alien girl resting against him. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly beneath the storm, fragile yet alive. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the storm and the distant groans of the collapsing facility. Then the girl's eyes opened, wide and filled with pain. She pressed a trembling hand against her swollen belly. Her voice broke into a whisper. "It comes." David's breath caught. He understood. The child, trapped inside her, was fighting to be born. He helped her lie back, his hands shaking. He was no doctor, no healer. But he had no choice. He wiped the rain from her face, his voice steady despite the fear inside him. "I've got you. Don't give up now," the girl cried out, her body arching in pain. Lightning lit the sky as if the world itself was watching. David held her hand tightly, whispering words of comfort. She didn't understand all of them, but she understood the tone, the promise in his voice. Minutes stretched into eternity. Her cries mixed with the storm. Then at last, the sound changed, a smaller cry, faint but alive. David stared in awe, cradling the newborn in his hands. The child glowed softly like its mother, but there was something different. Its eyes, when they opened, were human, clear and sharp, a hybrid unlike anything he had ever seen. The girl reached out weakly, tears streaming down her cheeks. David placed the child in her arms. She held it close, whispering words in her alien tongue. Her body trembled, but her eyes shone with something new, hope. David leaned close, his voice rough with awe. "It's not a weapon." She looked at him, nodding slowly, her voice cracked but clear. "They wanted power, but life is gift." David's chest tightened. He realized the truth. The aliens who had experimented on her had not wanted a family. They wanted a weapon, a hybrid child built for war. But what they had created was something greater, a bridge between species. Proof that survival did not always mean destruction. The girl clutched the child close, her eyes shimmering in the storm. She whispered one word again, the same word she had spoken since he found her. "Human." David met her gaze, his voice steady. "And you're not alone anymore." For the first time since his brother's death, David felt a weight lift from his chest. He had answered a call when no one else would, and now, holding the fragile thread of life in front of him, he understood why. The storm began to ease, the rain softening into a gentle drizzle. The crater glowed faintly from the fires below. The nightmare of the facility was buried, but the future was still uncertain. David helped the girl to her feet, cradling the child between them. She leaned against him, her strength failing, but her eyes locked onto his with unwavering trust. Together, they began to walk, step by step, away from the ruins. The galaxy beyond would not be kind. He knew that. She knew it too. But they carried something the galaxy had not seen before, a bond, a child, and the proof that compassion was stronger than cruelty. David looked at the newborn, then at the girl. His voice was quiet but certain. "In the darkest place, I answered your call, and now we'll write a new story." The girl nodded, holding the child close. Her whisper carried in the wind, "Together." And as they disappeared into the storm, the fate of two species began to change. Not with war, not with power, but with a choice, a human's choice to answer a voice in the dark.